Hi, I'm Travis.
And I'm Josh.
And in this video, we're going to show you how to correctly disassemble and reassemble the heatsink on your GHOST MV1.
Before using the MV1 or attempting to disassemble or reassemble your heatsink for the first time, we strongly recommend that you watch the introduction video on how the MV1 works from start to finish.
It's very important that the heatsink is kept clean, and it's extremely important that it's correctly assembled. Sometimes the top lid of the assembly can separate from the heatsink body when you pull the stem upwards.
This can be prevented by resting your thumb on the top edge of the heatsink while raising the stem. This is to prevent the lid from moving upwards when you pull up the stem. If you pull the top lid off, you'll have a partially disassembled heatsink, which will result in an air bypass, reduced vapor, and the potential for charring and overheating.
Even if you've only partially displaced the top lid, you will need to follow the instructions in this video to disassemble and then reassemble it correctly.
Simply pushing the lid down when it's partially displaced won't work, and by watching this video carefully, it should help you to understand why a perfect seal is so important.
You should never soak the top lid of the heatsink in isopropyl alcohol,
or ISO as it's commonly known.
and you should never soak or clean the black rubber gasket in ISO either. This is because ISO can damage the gasket, and if it's soaked in ISO for even a few minutes, it can actually shrink the part, which will mean you won't be able to get a perfect seal.
An incorrectly assembled heatsink or a misshapen or partially shrunk gasket will result in an air bypass. An air bypass can restrict the flow of air through the heat exchanger, which can result in overheating and uneven ABV with reduced extraction and less vapor. You can even char your herb.
To disassemble your heatsink, it's important to carry out the following steps in the correct order. And if your heatsink needs cleaning, you should also take the time to watch our video on how to clean your MV1.
Never try and disassemble the heatsink with the glass stem in place.
First, remove the glass stem gently and place it to one side.
Next, take off the top lid using your finger and thumb.
The heatsink body, lid, inner ceramic sleeve, and gasket are all directional, so it's easy to put them back together properly. The black gasket seal lifts off easily with minimum pressure. Next, remove the ceramic inner sleeve from the outer shell. The parts you can see here on the left-hand side, which are the glass stem, ceramic sleeve, and the main body of the heatsink, can all be cleaned using 91% isopropyl alcohol.
You can see how to clean these and all other parts by watching the short video on how to clean your MV1.
The two parts on the right are the top lid of the heatsink and the black rubber sealing gasket.
These two parts are not directly exposed to vapor and should never be soaked or cleaned using isopropyl alcohol.
Now that we've shown you how to correctly disassemble the heatsink, we can go ahead and show you how to reassemble it.
Reassembling the heatsink is just as easy as taking it apart.
The components are directional, so you can't really go wrong, but it's important that you do it in the right sequence.
First, you need to position the black rubber gasket onto the inner ceramic sleeve with the indented tab facing towards you. Once you've placed the gasket into position, lower the assembled parts into the outer heatsink shell. As mentioned earlier, the parts are directional, so you just need to match the indented black gasket tab to the corresponding slot on the outer heatsink shell. Push the gasket snugly into position with your thumb so it sits flush with the top of the shell.
Next, take the top lid. Position the matching directional tab of the top lid onto the matching groove of the outer shell, and clip the front edge into position. Check the top lid is in position to make sure you have assembled it correctly, and then gently slide the glass stem back into the housing.
It's very important to make sure that you have a perfect seal here. As mentioned, it's because an incorrectly assembled heatsink or a damaged gasket can result in an air bypass, and if that happens, you can char your herb.
An air bypass can also restrict the flow of air through the heat exchanger, which can result in overheating or uneven ABV with reduced extraction.
Here's a helpful hint. You can always check that you have a perfect seal by placing the bottom of the heatsink into the palm of your hand and holding it down firmly. Then try sucking air through the glass stem. If you can draw air in from the stem after forming a seal in your hand at the base of the heatsink, try repositioning the base in your hand and try again. If you can still draw air through the stem after forming a seal in your hand, you probably need a new gasket.
You can obtain spare gaskets or any other component parts by contacting customer support through the Ghost Vapes website.
All we have to do now is put the heatsink back into place.
First, close the door on the front of the device and gently push the heatsink back into place.
It's important that you close the door first before you reposition the heatsink. This is because the top silicone seal could push the heatsink up and out of position if the door wasn't closed first.
The heatsink is also directional, so you can't put it back into place incorrectly.
Remember, when raising or lowering the glass stem, to rest your thumb on the top edge of the heatsink. This is to prevent the lid from moving upwards when you pull up the stem.
If you pull the top lid off, you will have partially disassembled the heatsink, which will result in an air bypass, reduced vapor, and the potential for charring and overheating.
So now your MV1 is ready to be used again. We hope you enjoyed this video on how to correctly disassemble and reassemble the heatsink in your GHOST MV1.
Please take the time to watch the full introductory video on how to use the MV1. And the other short videos, how to use the MV1 with dry herbs and concentrates, how to clean your MV1, and how to use the app.
If you take the time to watch these carefully, you will see how simple the device is to use, and it will really help you get the best performance out of it as well. Thanks for watching.